Thank you so much for joining today's Attorney Collab by Visas.AI. Today I'm joined by some wonderful attorneys. We have Attorney Bianca Jordan. Hi, thanks
Hi,
for
how are
being
you?
here. We also have Attorney Ashley Morin. Thank you for being
Hi.
here. And then we're joined by Attorney Yesh, who is in the background. And if she joins later, we're going to say hi to her. In today's, Yesh, you want to say hi? Saw you
Hi,
unmuted.
sorry, I'm here. It's just my camera's not working for some reason.
No
So,
problem.
yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. So, in today's session, we are joined by a wonderful attorney, Attorney Bianca Jordan, who is an experienced attorney and legal entrepreneur who has rebelled against the status quo of the legal profession since the day she got her license to practice law. She's the founder of Brazen Legal. Am I saying it correctly? Or is it Brazen?
Brazen.
Brazen Legal, a virtual immigration law firm that helps immigrants obtain lawful permanent residence, aka a green card, something we all want if we are immigrants and coming through. And she does that through family members and companies. So that's family and business pathways in the US. Why don't we get started? And I'd love if we can ask you to tell us a little bit about why you started your practice, and maybe what was the inspiration behind it. I'm sure you're entrepreneurial, but what was the real inspiration behind it?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. I started my law firm. Um, Honestly, I've always wanted to start my own law firm, but I started it when I did in 2014. Honestly, because no one would hire me. The economy wasn't, it hadn't yet rebounded from the recession. At least the legal industry hadn't yet fully rebounded from the recession. And the summer that I got sworn into the bar, I applied to over 500 jobs in various states. I even moved down from Massachusetts to Maryland, thinking I'd be able to find a job out there. Actually, had a job offer that fell through. And so, after applying to so many jobs and not wanting to just settle for doc review, I figured, you know what? No one wants to hire me right now. I'll just hire myself. And I started my own practice. And I didn't have any money or anything. I just got sworn in, had no money, really had nothing to go from. So I said, you know what? I have my law license. I have some free Wi-Fi. That's really all I need to start a law firm right now. And I had a growing social media following, so I marketed there for free, and the rest is history.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Can you maybe share some this wasn't on the questions, but I think it's really interesting. Why do you think it was difficult for you to find? Were you really picky with the firms that you applied to, or were they? Was it just the economy, or is there any speculation on why you think it was difficult? I mean, it worked out for the best.
Right. So I feel like the employers had Goldilocks syndrome because I applied everywhere. And I also have an MBA, so I was also applying for business related positions as well. I had so many different variations of my resume depending on the job that I was applying to. So if I was applying to immigration law firms, I focused on my immigration experience. If I was applying to business positions, I would focus on the business consulting that I had done in the past. And what I was encountering is that the employer seemingly had Goldilocks syndrome, where it was either I am too overqualified to be a paralegal or a law clerk or something because I was an attorney with an MBA, or I wasn't experienced enough because I literally just got my law license. So it was really just that combination of I wasn't perfect enough for the jobs that were open, and so I wasn't able to get a job when I was looking.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Was there an early case that you remember starting when you started your law firm that really always stuck with you? Whether that was a positive case or it had a negative outcome, but one that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I think specifically one case that stuck with me that is really memorable is it was the first VAWA case that I did on my own. And so, like, on my own in my own law firm. And I remember sitting across from my client as she's explaining to me what she's going through so that we can craft her affidavit. And I found myself like on the verge of tears because what she was telling me was just so heartbreaking. And here I am thinking, I'm your attorney. I'm not supposed to be crying. Like, I'm supposed to be helping you and empowering you. But that not only reminded me that, attorneys are human too, and these cases do affect us. But after that case, I ended up taking a little bit of a break from VAWA because I found myself getting a little too like emotional when I was helping my clients.
That's really interesting. And when it comes to the visa types that you do, can you maybe share some of their names, like their classifications?
Sure. So I've kind of gone back and forth throughout my career. So I've done H-1Bs in the past. The majority of my cases at the moment are marriage based green card cases. So dealing with immigrant visas if they're going through consular processing. I am also working on some EB3s. I am hoping to get some more EB2 NIWs. I have a couple people that are interested in hiring me for those. So a mixed bag. I don't do like B1s, B2s. I don't do K1 visas. I don't really like them, to be honest. But a lot of my cases really are things that will put my client on a path to get a green card.
That's excellent. Very, very good. I want to bring in Ashley. Ashley, I know you very experienced and you've worked in really different realms, different firms, all sizes. Um, Maybe today we can make it the focus on actually one type of visa. So I'll give it to Ashley first, to see if she has any questions or any comments on what she just heard,
Yeah.
and then yeah, go ahead,
So
Ashley.
I've worked on a variety of business-based visas. I did a tiny, tiny bit of family-based immigration way back when I started practicing immigration. Sounds like around the same time as you. Um, but I've been in the perm EB2, 3, and then I did a lot of EB1Cs for multinational managers and executives, and the L1As that kind of go along with those, L1Bs, H1Bs, some TNs. All I'm on kind of the opposite side as you. We have a little bit of overlap, but it sounds like you're more in the family-based sphere, which I think is really interesting. I never worked on any VAWA cases, but I think those are interesting. Have you done any asylum?
Yes, I have done asylum cases in the past. I don't really do many these days, though.
I I feel like there's so many these days. I hear that everyone's working on them, but I have not done those. I think it would be interesting to get experience in that realm. So
That's interesting. Yeah, it sounds like the asylum cases are a very long term case, right? I see many cases take years for interviews to happen, and so I wonder how that process looks like for a attorney client. Does the attorney only come in when the interview is scheduled, or are they there from day one? Because I have some friends that have been in the process for 8 years. They've
yeah, it's a
never got.
long process.
And that's the norm, unfortunately, where if you're so the asylum process, I guess, is kind of split up into two. One's defensive and the other is affirmative. So defensive is if you're in removal proceedings. So if you come in undocumented and they immediately put you in removal proceedings, if you want to apply for asylum, you'd be filing a defensive asylum application. And since you're already in removal proceedings, those cases tend to move a little bit faster than an affirmative case. And an affirmative case is maybe you came in on a visitor's visa, so you're not in removal proceedings, and then you decide to file the asylum application. And so the defensive application will be filed with the court, whereas the affirmative would be filed with USCIS, and the wait time for those is very, very long. There are unfortunately some people that have been waiting for 8 years. So unfortunately, that's not uncommon. And as far as when the attorney comes in, it really depends on the client. A lot of people, a lot of immigrants, when they're first coming to the United States, they might not have the funds to hire an attorney for an asylum application. So they're usually going the DIY route, or they're paying someone to do the forms for them. And then the attorney maybe comes in at the interview stage, or if the asylum application is referred to court, then the attorney might come in and represent them in what's now a defensive asylum application.
Really interesting insight. Thank you so much. Um, Attorney Jordan, maybe I can ask you a question to follow up on that. So a lot of the cases that we've been, we've spoken to basically online, and even some of my friends have mentioned that they're not really interested in pushing the process because you are in a status where you have a life here and you're paying your taxes and you're doing everything in a normal state. So there isn't really a reason to rush the process if it's not being rushed at a point when it's taken 7 years. It's already taken too much time. As an attorney giving general advice, we're not giving any advice to personal people. Would you say that that's something that one should do, or should one rush their process just in case the next administration comes in and changes the rules again?
So, generally speaking, I don't recommend that people rush their asylum application if they don't have a strong case. Because while your application for asylum is pending, you are kind of in this protected, like authorized period of stay where while your application is pending, you cannot be deported. So you do have that at least temporary freedom from deportation. You're able to apply for a work permit and a social security number. So you're able to at least find work in the United States and pay taxes and create a life here. But if you do feel like you have a really strong case, you have the evidence to back it up, you have a very knowledgeable attorney to represent you, then it might make sense for you to ask to expedite your asylum application. And if you do, then they could rush your interview, but rushing your interview could mean a year instead of 8 years. And if you win your case, then a year later, you'd be able to get a green card. But that's definitely something that you would be discussing with an attorney who would be able to properly advise you as to whether you should pursue that strategy.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that breakdown. We do have a case here that I'd love to share with everyone, and then please, anyone that's on today's call can give their insights. There is a person who is a budget manager at an accredited university in Florida that basically is a nonprofit. It's categorized as a nonprofit high education institution, and they're currently on an F1 visa post completion of and currently in OPT after doing their master's degree. And that one is valid until August 2024. Their employee is technically a high education institution, as I mentioned. So they qualify for the H-1B specialty occupation, which is one that is very rare and we don't often talk about. But that basically doesn't fall under the cap. And please correct me if I'm wrong. The university's immigration attorneys have recently reviewed this case and hesitated to file it. So they're reaching out and they're saying that the reason why that's happening is basically because their title is a budget manager, but what their responsibilities entail is accounting. And because the title doesn't say accountant, the attorney doesn't want to file this H-1B specialty occupation. And so this is an international student that basically got their bachelor, attempted to do an H-1B, and it was denied because it was in the lottery. They didn't make it. Then they did a master's. They got a really good position as a budget manager that does in the job description everything an accountant does, just as under a different title. Their salary is above the minimum, which is $60,000 a year. But yet, this attorney is saying we can't file this H-1B specialty occupation. So, if this person were to reach out to any of you on here and say, can you help me? Would your advice be that, sorry, your title doesn't say it, so you don't qualify for this visa? Or does USCIS look further than just the title?
Yeah, so most H-1Bs are specialty occupation visas. I think the thing that they're getting at is that they work for a U.S. institution of higher education, which is an exemption to the cap. So that they wouldn't have to, go through the lottery process and get picked if that university qualifies. I think there's a couple points that it has to meet. It has to award bachelor's degrees. I don't think it can be for profit. Things like that. It sounds like it does meet it, but I don't know, all the
Yeah.
details. So if it does, then they'd be exempt from the cap. The thing I think it's coming down to is the title issue, and I don't know all of the details that the other attorney knew that gave them that advice. So obviously, I'm not going to say that that attorney is wrong. They very well could know something that I don't know. But my understanding, and it's been a few years since I've done H-1B, so maybe something's changed. I don't think so. Is that I'm not sure why they would need to be an accountant rather than a budget manager, unless they're worried that because it says manager, they're overseeing more people, which would make the, you know,
Wage level higher, maybe?
yeah, that's
So
where it was.
from what I understand, it's the SOC code. Your title could be Princess Peaches, but it depends on your job duties and SOC code, right? And your job duties, if it's like level 1, you're kind of saying you're doing everything under the supervision of a supervisor, every single job duty that you have. That means that you don't have any discretion in any of the job duties or any decisions that you take. But like Ashley said, the other attorney may know something that we don't know, just with the limited information. But from my understanding, your SOC code is what matters. You
Really
may get
interesting.
an RFE saying, "Why is your job title Princess Peaches?" But um, if you have your answer for that, if you kind of can show that your job duties are detailed enough, they're not vague, and they meet or match the wage level that you select, more or less, you should not have an issue with the title. I hope that answers the
Yeah,
question.
I agree.
Thank you, Yash. It really, really does. I do want to just add to it because there's more context that I didn't want to go dive into. This person does not work under a manager, and they basically lead as an accountant. But the problem with the job role is that their university cannot change it, given that they have a structure of job roles across departments. They've done this exact visa for many, many people. However, this specific person does not have it. The attorney is hesitant, and I personally believe that there's a lot of attorneys that offer almost like a refund or of some sort based on approval rate. So maybe this attorney is saying, "I want this to be perfect. I want it to no RFE. I want it to say that the position has to say accountants." Maybe there is that I'm learning through my experience that, but the issue is that we're constantly seeing, and this is a personal opinion, professionals that do everything right. They study, they do it, they make it happen, and I see this person and I see someone that really did it everything exactly how this country intended for immigration to be, and they apply, and then a random attorney tells them, "Yeah, sorry, you can't do it." So what does that leave them with? It leaves them with very little power, and exactly what Attorney Jordan said earlier in the call, when she was applying, it was a different type of no thank you, but it's the same one, which is you really have little control and there's not much you can fight for. But I do want to ask you, Attorney Jordan, if you have any feedback on this. Do you agree with Yesh that job duties are much more important than just the title per se? You can't deny, you can be hesitant to apply for someone's H-1B only based on, yeah, the title doesn't match. Can you guys change the title?
Yeah, I think the job duties are definitely important here, but without knowing, I agree with, Ashley and Yesh, without knowing the full context of the situation, I can't really advise one way or the other. But
Yeah,
I
Very
and
good.
will
with that
add,
extra context that you gave, it does sound like it's more of a wage level issue, as Yesh was saying, because they don't have a manager. And if they're trying to go for a level 1 wage level, which it sounds like maybe they're at, I think you mentioned 60K. Um, that could be why the attorney's hesitant. They might think that because it says manager in their job title and because they don't have a direct manager, that they need to be bumped up to a higher wage level, and maybe their salary doesn't meet that. Um, I'm not sure if they're managing a team, if that's just what the title is. It sounds like because the school has a structure of how they title their jobs, that they're not willing to deviate from, that would be something that could be brought up in an RFU response if they did receive a request for evidence. but without knowing more, I think that's probably all we can say on it.
Very good. So the best way for anyone that's watching today's collab, if you have any issues or if you'd like help, please schedule a consultation strategy session with your immigration attorney. I think that's wonderful. Without giving too much advice and too much context, we just wanted to cover it generally. So thank you so much for all your insights. I will take it back to Attorney Jordan, and I do want to ask you about embracing innovation in law. And for you, it's really important to kind of close the gap that we see in justice system overall. What's something that you're passionate about when it comes to that, and how do you think you're currently addressing it in your day to day profession at Brazen Legal?
So, right now, the easiest way that I can at least contribute something to the access to justice gap is through the content that I share on social media. I share it, throughout social media since day one. I've done that early on in my career. I realized that there are a lot of people that live in legal deserts where they really do need this help and education and information. They just don't have anyone near them that can communicate this to them. And so for me, like, I speak different languages, so I will occasionally create content in other languages as well, so that I'm at least trying to get that information to people that need it through social media. As AI and tech continue to evolve, I'm looking for ways to really, like, create something in the tech space that can better help immigrants who need legal services. Because right now, I don't have to tell you guys, there is a huge access to justice gap. And so much so, a lot of states are now seemingly, I don't want to say deregulating what we do, but allowing non attorneys to provide limited scope legal services to try to address this need. So I think as attorneys, it's really important for us to do what we can to try to incorporate more tech and AI in the way that we deliver legal services, so that we can still make sure that people are getting the right kind of quality legal services that they need.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think what you're also addressed there is there's a lot of non-attorneys that do provide full-on services, and I've come across this multiple times, and I brought it up, and no opinions here. I mean, everyone has their thing, but I do think about it a lot, and it's that you know all of you on today's collab have studied the law, have been in the law, have done so much to get your license that I think your level of knowledge is priceless, especially for a mistake that could cost someone their entire life here. So, how do you think? Why is it important to listen to advice on social media, but not use advice on social media to file your case fully? And why is legal advice and counsel still important, even if a visa could have a lot of resources online? It could look like I could file it on my own.
I think so. It's not that you can't follow advice that you hear on social media, because I'm constantly sharing information on social media. I think you need to just verify the source, make sure that the person who is sharing this information actually knows what they're talking about. As far as attorneys, sharing information, if depending on the medium of choice, there's only so much information that you can fit into, a TikTok video or a YouTube video. So, as attorneys sharing information on social media, we're giving very general information. That's not enough to diagnose whatever issue that you have, because there are nuances. I might tell you very generally, if you are the victim or survivor of domestic violence and you're married to a US citizen, then you might qualify for VAWA. But I need to dig into that a little bit deeper. But at least you have a base to work from, so that way you're at least getting the basic information to see if you might qualify. And then you can take that information to an actual attorney and you can say, hey, I saw this information. I saw this TikTok video. I saw this post on social media about VAWA. I think I'm eligible. What do you think? And that's where the consultation would come in, so that we can really dive deep into your situation to provide that legal advice.
Wonderful. You've mentioned earlier the EB2 NIW, correct? And then how you're trying to get into it, or if you've already gone into doing more of those cases. Could I pick your brain on your thoughts on it, and if you'd had to introduce to a client what is an EB2 NIW and who you think qualifies for it?
So I don't have any EB2 NIW cases that I've done yet, but I'm trying to do more of the employment. I used to do employment back in the day, and then more people kept coming to me for family based. So I kind of put the employment immigration on the back burner. So I'm trying to pick that up again.
Excellent. That's great. Attorney Ashley, you have done EB2 NIWs, I'm
A
assuming.
long time ago, yeah.
Okay.
So, with an NIW, it's a national interest waiver. So basically, you're saying that you want them to waive um, the labor certification process, the perm process, which takes a long, long time, over a year. So you want them to waive that because it's in the national interest for that person to come into the U.S. because their proposed endeavor has both substantial merit and national importance. There's three factors. That's the first one, that they're well positioned to achieve that endeavor. And the third one is that it would be beneficial to the United States to waive that requirement. So it's kind of a high bar and it's up to USCIS discretion. So I would definitely advise, seeking out legal advice to have someone look at your case specifically and see if they think that you could meet that standard. If you
That's
can, then it's awesome because you can bypass, the lengthy perm process.
Yeah, it sounds like another one of those, high bar visas that require a lot of preparation. So I'm assuming it's a lot, especially on just a small team to do. It feels like it needs a quite a lot of hands on board. Maybe we can go back to family visas. I think marriage based visas are really interesting because it feels to me that they're probably the most filed, or the most popular, only based on what we see online. There's a huge interest in them. There's a huge interest in asking questions about them. Is it generally, from your experience, Attorney Jordan, is it generally something that you have ever received a denial on in all your years practicing?
Yeah, I've had a few denials for marriage based green cards, usually because a client lied to me about something that we missed and then I find out about it in the denial. That's always fun. But yeah, I've definitely had denials. I think there's this common misconception that the easiest way to get a green card is if you marry a US citizen so that you can adjust your status. But that's only one way to get a green card. Meaning there's, all the other ways to get a green card don't require being married. But I think just a lot of people think it's easier. And so sometimes people might be tempted to get into fraudulent marriages where they're paying someone to marry them to get them a green card. And that's where things can get really dicey.
Yeah, and so with your denials, does that mean the end of the road for your clients, or can you fix and refile, or are they now like barred from doing it?
It depends on the denial reason. If they're denied because of marriage fraud, then there's no waiver for that. So that's kind of like an end of the road situation. But if they're denied because they didn't have enough evidence, or if they're denied because something that they did requires a waiver and they're eligible for that waiver, then yeah, you can definitely just reapply.
Is
Oh,
there an
that's
appeal process if they're denied for fraud?
So you can appeal, like you can file a 290B, but in my experience, USCIS is only going to approve those if you can really show where they made that mistake or they got the law wrong or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, I I personally haven't had any clients that were denied for marriage fraud. People usually come to me when their cases are denied to refile them, but I don't know anybody who's successfully appealed a marriage fraud finding.
Hmm.
So that means that their answer doesn't just come from, oh, we think this is fraud. Perhaps they do more digging to really confirm it's fraud.
Yes,
And
very
so
much
that,
so. Yeah, because it's a high bar. Like they can't just throw around marriage fraud because they want to. They actually have to cite INA 204C in their denial and say that it's marriage fraud because the consequence is so high. So if you are actually charged with marriage fraud, then it was very clear that they found it.
wow. And so, yeah, no, that's really, really interesting to hear because marriage visas in general have a lot of online ways to apply for. You know, there's a lot, like you said, DIY ways.
Mhm.
Why, what is, it's not really a sales pitch, but what is the pitch that an attorney, that someone should always do a marriage-based visa with an attorney? What, if this was a social media video that you're making, what would be three reasons that you think one should only file a marriage-based visa with a help of an attorney?
Um, so way to put me on the spot. So I think so the first reason why you should work with an immigration attorney when filing your marriage-based green card case is because you want to make sure you're working with someone that knows what they're doing because they're going to prepare your application as complete as possible. We know exactly not only what needs to go in that application, but we also know what the immigration officer needs to see. We put it together as complete as possible to minimize that denial and if anything to increase the likelihood that you'll get a faster approval. Um, also anything can go wrong. I have seen cases go from 0 to 60 really quickly where you think that all the forms are right and you've checked all the boxes and you think that everything is good and then things go downhill at the interview because you spent so much time making sure that the paperwork was right that you weren't even prepared for what you were going to be asked about that paperwork at the interview. The other reason why you should always have an attorney helping you is, because it's kind of redundant, but we know what to expect. If something actually does go wrong, we know how to solve it. If you get a request for evidence that's really nasty, we know how to resolve it. If you get a notice of intent to deny, same thing. We know what we need to put in that to make sure that you still get that approval. So you're always going to be better off working with an attorney than not. And I always tell people if you're thinking, I'll do it on my own, and then if anything goes wrong, I'll hire an attorney, like go ahead and just hire the attorney. Because in a way, it's kind of like you're jinxing yourself, but also acknowledging that you would need an attorney to help you fix something if something went wrong.
Excellent. Very good. No, you really, you rocked that. It was right on the spot, and now I understand why you love being an influencer also as part of your long list of things that you do, an attorney influencer. So I do want to again move us to another space, and this is one of my final questions for today's session. I want to ask you about how you use your entrepreneurial business skills that you were able to get throughout the years and in your studies in your practice, and why you think that the business of being an attorney is really important in today's time.
So, how I guess, use my entrepreneurial skills within my law firm is I'm constantly thinking of ways to improve the way that I deliver legal services to my clients. So, kind of being an entrepreneur in my own law firm, not just looking at it, because people think that all we do is fill out forms. And I always tell people, like, I don't win my cases because I'm really great at data entry. I do really well and win my cases because I know the law and I understand what immigration needs to see in order to get that approval. And so I'm always looking for ways to go above and beyond that. Okay, so my client's application has been filed. What can I provide to them in the meantime? Okay, so now I've gotten them their green card. How can I help them to start to think now for when it comes time to citizenship? It's not just I complete the forms and I get you your green card and you're on your way and I never hear from you again. It's still trying to maintain that client relationship from start till whenever they're ready to apply for citizenship. And then once they've gotten their citizenship, now it's filing a green card for someone else. I'm always thinking about maintaining that client relationship. I always tell people, once a brazen client, you're part of the family, like you're always here, and I'm always going to be there to help you in the future. Like one of my internal slogans is that I help my clients secure their immigration legacy for generations to come with the hope that I am part of that process for them when they're ready to petition for more family members to come in.
Oh, brilliant. That's really, really cool. And to think about, of course, it's not the end of the road. It's just one of many more to come. That's really cool. Attorney Ashley, I want to bring you back into the conversation and see if you have any questions, but also ask you about what are your thoughts these days on the visa types that you're working on, and then we'll go over to Attorney Jordan again about the H-1B season that's coming up.
Yeah, so for your H-1B questions, Yesh would be a better resource on that. She's the H-1B expert. But my question is, so for I'm mostly on the business side, and for business space, once you get a client, which is going to be the business, that brings in it work on its own because they have a bunch of employees. If they're going to get a visa for one employee, they're probably going to get visas for a bunch of their other employees, and then that turns into them needing green cards. So like bringing in the one client kind of gets the ball rolling for other clients. But I know for marriage-based cases, I would assume it's probably a lot of word of mouth, like, "Oh, I worked with Bianca and she did a great job. You should go to her." But how do you maybe this is more of a PR question because I think this is mostly based towards marketing. I'm just curious. Do you still do like a lot of social media, or how do you bring in your clients?
So last time I looked at my data, around 96% of my clients come to me from social media. So I don't really get a lot of referrals. I mean, I get referrals, but my main traffic source is social media. Right now, it's Instagram and TikTok specifically. So I'm constantly posting videos. I go live, I repurpose those lives into shorter clips that I can post on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram. So I kind of have like a machine going in that end. I also um, I post on LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is also kind of a source for um, my green card clients, even though I don't really talk about my law firm on LinkedIn. I usually talk about my consulting business on LinkedIn. So that's a little bit weird. But most of my clients are coming to me from social media. My clients either follow me, so they're well aware of my shenanigans. They are aware of how I am, because what you see is what you get with me. So how I am online is exactly how I am when I'm representing them, and they like that authenticity in it, and they also like the way I just explain things to them. So for the most part, they're just coming to me from social media. I don't pay for ads. Um, I don't pay any of those like SEO companies because my social media complements my SEO. So I don't feel like I need to do that. But most of my marketing comes from social media right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard TikTok is huge for that kind of thing now, and especially in the immigration field since it's federal law, you don't need to necessarily find clients that are, within 10 or 50 miles of you. If you can, represent anybody anywhere. So that's awesome.
Yeah, the national way of doing it is really cool, and working remotely. I mean, I've had an immigration attorney that I've worked with for now almost 3 years, and it's all been remote and it's all been online. And so I think this is really interesting to hear. And I definitely believe that the internet does have its benefits in this way. However, one of the last questions that I will ask you in today's session is, how do you currently collect evidence and data and information from your client? Do you do that all through email communication? Do you use a specific software?
So right now, I'm actually in the process of switching systems. But my clients do have a portal that they're able to upload their evidence to. For my clients that are a little less tech savvy or just feel more comfortable with email, they continue to just send me things via email. But most of my clients now are just uploading things to their portal. I can count on a couple fingers how many clients wanted to just snail mail me things. So they do, and then we can just scan it because I don't keep paper. So even if a client sends me something in the mail, I scan it and then I just shred it. But for the most part, it's just sending me things through a portal.
Brilliant. That's very cool. Yeah, that's kind of the tech that Visas.ai brings forward. So it's really interesting to see how you're already using it. It's really important. For me, it was a game changer. Not only is it just because of convenience per se, but it's when there's a portal, there's a checklist. And when there's a checklist, both you know what is done and what needs to be done, and the client knows. The most difficult thing is email communication. As nice and simple as it looks, you're constantly thinking, wait, what did I send? Where is it? Do they know that? Do they have it? You know what I mean? So I think that's wonderful. Any closing remarks from you, Attorney Jordan, for today's session?
I can't really think of anything at the
Good. That
moment.
means
I'm just really, I think right now where we are as attorneys with this, with all the changes that are happening in AI, it's kind of the wild, wild west. And I know that for some attorneys that might intimidate them, maybe freak them out even, but that just means that there's so much potential. I always say when nothing is certain, everything is possible, and I'm just really excited to see where we're going to go with all the changes that are happening.
I love that quote.
it's really nice. Attorney Ashley, any closing remarks?
Uh, no, I think we're both probably sounds like we started around the same time. So, um, AI seems like a cool tool that we can use going forward. I'm not concerned that it's going to replace, a legal mind, but just help us to do our jobs. Although did you hear about the attorneys that got in trouble for using AI that made up cases? That was a crazy read. I just read about that. But yeah, that's all I got.
And
Wonderful.
that's exactly why AI is not going to replace us because we're still
Exactly.
human and humans are still going to do less than intelligent things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliantly said. Yesh, any closing remarks?
Well, I I agree with both of you guys. Regardless of how developed AI becomes, I think these cases do need a human touch. They need a human behind it to understand what these people go through. Um, and I relate to Ms. Jordan because I started immigration, um, and one of my first cases was like WAVA cases and humanitarian based cases because that's the kind of cases that you would get during your law school clinics, right? Asylum and WAVA and stuff. And I feel like even if you put AI in that situation, they're never going to be able to connect to a person and get the details that you need as much as having a person sitting across the table can get. I see it as a tool to help us be better. Just kind of say, hey, have you considered this option? Hey, have you considered this? Or just kind of help us work faster so we can reach more clients rather than replacing the human entirely.
Wonderful. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for being here today. Just a quick disclaimer, just because everyone here except me is a immigration attorney doesn't mean they are your immigration attorney. So please do not take anything that we mentioned in today's collab as legal advice. And you can always reach out to everyone here with their names, of course, and schedule a consultation strategy session with them.